welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. It's Dianne, your lactation consultant.
And this is Abby, the Badass Breastfeeder. And today's episode is brought to you by Sheila Darling Coaching. Sheila Darling is a social worker, certified hypnotherapist, and mindfulness meditation teacher, and could be your start to a more peaceful life. And today's episode is also brought to you by Original Sprout. Original Sprout carries safe, effective, and pediatrician-tested shampoos, conditioners, styling, and body care products produced and packaged in the United States. And you will hear more about these sponsors later, but they make this podcast possible. So please head to badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com and check out our sponsor page if you need anything. See if you can give them any of your business. While you're there, scroll down and enter your email address, and we'll send these episodes right to your inbox on Monday, so you don't have to go searching for it. And now Dianne has our review of the week.
Our review of the week comes off of iTunes, so thank you so much for putting this on iTunes for us. It's from Taylor Garmaker. I want to make sure that I got that right because she put her name in there. A lot of people don't do that, so thank you so much for telling us who you are. My new favorite podcast. I wish I had heard this before I even gave birth, and more so as I struggled the first few months breastfeeding my daughter. Such empowering information as well as informative conversations about the stuff that truly matters. Thank you so much. I'm glad you found us. I'm glad you thought it was helpful. Thank you for the review. And you can send us reviews, either put them on iTunes, you can put them in email form and send them to us at badassbreastfeedingpodcast@gmail.com. And we are going to today talk about some stuff that truly matters. For real. Like,
it
for
all
real
matters, but yeah.
It all matters, yeah. All the stuff we talk about.
We never talk about stuff that doesn't matter.
That's very true.
Because I'll just stay in bed.
I know.
We're going to do that.
Yes, what we always matter. So we are going to talk about, though, like boob shape, size, nipple shape,
boobs
size.
And nipples come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. And, you know, it's really amazing the amount of different shapes and sizes and things that are going on with that body part.
You know,
it's incredible.
Until I started working in this field, I thought everybody had boobs that looked like mine.
Yeah.
Like, I really did. I didn't know that there were so many differences or that anything really mattered. You know, like I just didn't think that it really mattered, like what your boob size was as far as like breastfeeding and all of that stuff. Even when I got pregnant, I was like, I never thought that it would matter. So where does this idea come from that it matters? You know, that your breast size is going to impact your breastfeeding or that your nipple is going to impact your breastfeeding. I never would have considered that at all.
No, I know. And it comes in with all of that other confusing information because it's, you know, we think it kind of makes logical sense that, like, well, if you have big boobs, then you have more milk than if you have small boobs. Right? I mean, like a big water balloon is going to have more water in it than a small water balloon. But turns out it's actually that's not even true at all.
Oh, it has nothing to even,
You have absolutely nothing to do with the amount of milk that your body is making. The size of your breasts. You know, it doesn't affect milk supply even a little bit. Not at all. It's not related at all. Turns out the size doesn't matter.
It really doesn't.
It just doesn't matter.
It really does not matter at all. The only thing that matters, I think, if we're going to say any of it matters, is that sometimes it's hard to position a baby when you're bigger breasted, or you feel like you're going to suffocate your baby when you're bigger breasted. Like I see that all the time. The moms are like, oh my God, my breast is bigger than my baby's head. I'm going to suffocate him. But you won't.
And it can be more difficult. And we can talk about, you know, different things you can do if you have larger breasts, you know, as far as positioning goes and trying to deal with that. Because that's a thing. That is a thing. That's really sometimes really difficult for people. They have to figure that out.
Yeah, absolutely. But one of the other things too that comes up, and I know this is how I felt, because when I had my kids, when I had my first son, I was like really like kind of, I guess I was skinny. I don't know. You look back and you don't ever think yourself as skinny, but I was a distance runner and stuff like that and in the service. And I know I was way smaller than I am right now. Like my breast size was way smaller than it is right now. And then my milk came in and I was like, oh my God, I look obscene. because I was not prepared for my breast size to get as big as it was when I was that small. So I was like, what am I supposed to do with this? Like, I was like, I can't leave the house. I look obscene. This is insane.
Yeah. I know it's weird to have that body part or any part of your body just change so drastically.
Right. And then women that already have big breasts are like, I'm not going to get bigger, am I? It's like, yeah. You will.
There's that scene in that movie. What's that movie called? Oh God. John Travolta is the like guy and Kirstie Alley has a baby.
Oh,
and then he ends up, look who's talking.
Yeah, with the baby talks.
Baby talks, yeah. Who's the baby's voice? I can't even remember. This movie is so old.
I think it's like Bruce Willis or something, isn't it?
And Kirstie Alley's pregnant, and at the beginning, and her boobs have gotten really big, so she's like standing in the mirror, and she's trying to be like all sultry, and she's like, "Oh, look," and then she's just like, "I hate this."
It really is like, and some people love it, but I know I was just like, oh my God, I was mortified.
And it's just too weird to have anything change so drastically, so rapidly. It's just like, whoa, what's happening here?
Yeah. I mean, and I've had moms be like, I went from, this size to a triple G, like stuff I never even knew existed. I didn't know there was such a thing as a triple G.
Yeah. But and that becomes an issue actually when you're trying to find a nursing bra.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what size am I even? And is it going to change? And how, so it's really hard to get a good size for that. And you do want a good size because you don't want to be constricted because then you don't want to be, especially really early on, like having things too tight and they're really, the milk is all constricted.
Yep. And then you're going to change again. So
it's going to change.
Don't put, a whole lot of money. We have an episode, I'll link it in the show notes, about sizing with Rumina.
Oh, yeah.
So I will link that in the show notes because that was a good one. That was a while back.
That was a really long time ago.
Yeah. But that might be really helpful if anybody is looking to, size, because it is really hard. But when you go to try to breastfeed this baby and you have bigger breasts, it's like, how do I can't even see where the nipple is. Or I can't, I'm having a hard time positioning the baby. What do I do with this?
Right. Or the nipple's so huge. And it's like, well, they told me I should put most of the areola in the baby's mouth, except my areola is the size of like a tea saucer.
Yeah.
And so how is that even possible? And then you have to kind of realize that that's not going to happen.
Right. And that is one positional thing. Like when people say to me, I'm trying to get more of the areola in the baby's mouth. And it's like, but everybody has a different size areola.
Right. Like, how do we know? Right.
So you can't really go by that as your guideline. Don't go by that as your guideline. If the latch is comfortable, go by that as your guideline, not by how much areola you can stuff in your baby's mouth, because it might not matter.
If your areola is the size of a tea saucer, then that's not going to happen. And that's not useful either. It's never going to happen. Your baby can't fit all that in their mouth.
No, not at all.
And they don't need to.
So go by what's comfortable for you as far as what it feels like. Breastfeeding, a lot of breastfeeding is by feel. So you want to know that you're like feeling comfortable with the latch and feeling comfortable with where you're sitting and what you're doing and how you're positioning your breast.
Yeah. Since we're going on and on about large breasts, maybe we could talk about, some of the positions, because one of the things that people are really, we see breastfeeding as like what you normally see is like holding the baby in the cradle hold, which is really difficult. That's a really difficult position for somebody who has really, really large breasts.
Yes.
And so you can try things like some things that people say are more useful to them are like the cross cradle, where you're kind of like the baby is just like across right under your breasts, or the football hold.
Yes.
People swear by this football hold. I could never figure that out, but that doesn't matter. It's not about me.
Yeah. It was never my go-to either.
So that's where your baby is like on your breast, and then they're kind of to your side on the same side of your body of the breast that they're attached to.
They're like right up against your rib cage.
Right.
Yeah. And that can be really helpful with bigger breasts, because then you can really get a better idea. You can see the baby a little bit better and kind of see what's going on. One of the things that is really important, and this is all like kind of newborn baby stuff, because as your baby gets bigger, it's going to be a lot easier.
Right.
But when you have a newborn, things like the cradle hold, like you were saying, is just like way too hard, even just for any newborn. because it's just your baby's so floppy. But you really need to have a good support pillow or something that's going to really support you well so that you can feel comfortable with positioning your baby. If you're trying to like hold your breast and trying to hold the baby and trying to, manipulate your body in a specific way, like that can be really uncomfortable after a while. So we want you to have something that's going to be really, really stable and where you can like lay your baby on it and manipulate how you're holding your breast. Because you're always, no matter what your breast size is, I always tell new mothers, like, you still have to hold the breast, even if your breast is small, because your baby can't support the weight. I mean, that's just too much weight for your baby.
Yeah. And the other thing that's always good to master is, no matter your breast size either, is laying down.
Yes.
Because laying down, side lying position is just awesome in all kinds of ways.
Yeah.
Because you're laying down.
I swear
Who doesn't love to lay down?
I know.
And all of these things are so hard to picture. And this is where Google can come in really handy. We will give you permission sometimes to use Google, but not always. But in this position, if you Google like breastfeeding positions or large breasted breastfeeding positions that people who have large breasts have, been able to say that works for them, then you can see it, which is harder for us to explain in a podcast, but when you can actually see it, and then you can try these things, some of them will work and some of them will feel really weird to you. And then you can just kind of mess around with the different positions until you find a comfortable one, and then just like go nuts, just like do that one. And that's, like you said, it's not going to last forever, because eventually your baby gets more head control and more control over everything, and they're bigger and they're easier to deal with.
Right. And I have moms that will ask me all the time, well, how am I supposed to breastfeed in public?
Yeah.
With a pillow. Right. And, this is what we're talking about now with all the support and trying new things and trying different positions and getting comfortable. This is all newborn baby stuff the first few weeks when we want you to be home breastfeeding your baby. Like, that is your job in the beginning, is just kind of like hanging out with your baby, getting used to everything, figuring it all out. And it doesn't necessarily come naturally. Like, breastfeeding is the most natural thing you'll do.
Yeah, totally. And some people think it's really helpful to like roll a towel up under their breast and like kind of bring it up, because if it's sagging way down, they're just like, oh, I can't, like you said, you can't see, and it's kind of hard to deal with.
Yeah.
So you can roll a towel up under there. I've even heard of people like tying a scarf around their neck and like under their breast and creating like a boob sling.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I kind of just want to do that anyway. It seems like really comfortable. And I have some people have, I have a friend who was super large breasted all through like as soon as she hit puberty. And she has had just chronic back problems, like really bad back problems. And she would go to the doctor, my back. And they're just like, yeah, well, it's not, I wish I had known about the boob sling, and I could have just like put her in some boob slings. But she actually ended up recently, she has 2 kids and she's having another one in like next month. But like a couple years ago, she got breast reduction surgery. This is so like off topic. This has nothing to do with anything. I just want to tell the end of the story is that she got breast reduction surgery and her back problems are completely gone.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So anyway, do you have anything more about large breasts?
Just that I want moms to, not feel uncomfortable breastfeeding with this, with having larger breasts.
Yeah, you're so not alone. And like, honestly, if you feel more comfortable, like if you are in public and you feel more comfortable with a cover, like cover. Right. It's fine. It's always okay to cover. I feel like we've gotten to this point in like this breastfeeding movement where it's just like, I will be uncovered and free the nipple and, let my titties hang out. And that's awesome. Like, I want that to go on. But the thing is, if you're not comfortable with that, that's totally fine. You are allowed to cover. And it's, if that makes you more comfortable, then like we highly encourage that.
Yeah, whatever works for you. But you're not going to suffocate your baby.
No.
You will not suffocate your baby, and you will make enough milk. I mean, the breast size is fine, but it's totally okay. And you will get a little bit bigger, and then you're going to get, hopefully, well, I shouldn't say you're going to go back to your regular size because not everybody does, but and breastfeeding does not make your breast sag. That's another thing that comes up quite a bit. It's actually pregnancy that does that. It's not breastfeeding. So, and genetics. So don't worry if you're getting bigger and you're worried about, oh my God, my breast's going to sag. Is this going to happen? Is that going to happen? No, it's okay. Just no worries.
Yeah. I mean, this is what they're for. So
this is what they're for.
They're actually supposed to sag a little bit after, after you have the kids. It's just how it is. What about the deal with super large areolas or really large nipples that are like so big that the baby can't fit them in their mouth?
So yeah, should we get into nipples after we hear from our sponsors?
Yeah. Oh my God. Really? Okay. This time is going by so fast.
We have so much to talk about.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, we will be right back.
Okay.
Today's episode is brought to you by Original Sprout. Original Sprout carries safe, effective, and pediatrician-tested shampoos, conditioners, styling, and body care products produced and packaged in California, USA. The Reef Safe Face and Body Sunscreen is SPF 27 and made with 10% non-nanoparticles of natural zinc for broad spectrum protection against both UVA and UVB rays. And I'm so happy to be doing an ad about sunscreen because, yes, finally, sunscreen weather. The gentle formula won't clog pores and is safe for babies, children, and adults. Protect your skin from damage from the sun for long-term skin health. All of Original Sprouts products are paraben and phthalate free, vegan, and cruelty-free. Their proprietary formulas contain nourishing extracts from fruits, vegetables, and flowers that the whole family can enjoy. Made for babies, perfect for grown-ups too. Check out the entire line at originalsprout.com and use code BADASS for 25% off of your purchase. And today's episode is also sponsored by Sheila Darling Coaching. The transition to parenthood can be intense. Feelings of anxiety and depression are actually quite common. Your feelings should not be ignored. You deserve space where you can process this transition and all of the emotional and psychological changes that come with it. You may hear people telling you to just enjoy it, or it all goes by so fast. These statements are dismissive of the changes we go through when we have a new baby. Transitioning to a new family member isn't always the peaceful journey we see on TV. Sheila Darling Coaching can be that professional support person that Dianne and I are always saying there is no shame in getting. Sheila Darling is a social worker, certified hypnotherapist, and mindfulness meditation teacher, and could be your start to a more peaceful life. Head to SheilaDarling.com to schedule your consultation today and mention this podcast and get 10% off of a coaching package. All of our sponsors and their promo codes can be found in our show notes under this episode on badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com. Our show notes will also include further information about things we talk about in this episode. And at badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com, you will also find our breastfeeding resources, all of our other episodes, and information about scheduling your very own one-on-one online lactation consultation with Dianne. And our shout out of the week goes to Black Birth Workers Rock. This is an Instagram account, and you can also find the more information at blackbirthworkersrock.com. You will find a Black Birth Workers Rock directory if you are looking for a Black birth worker. And follow the account. It's got lovely, birthing and fertility and lactation and, paternal health information. So again, information or Instagram, Black Birth Workers Rock on Instagram, and you can follow them. And that's all I've got.
Awesome.
So before we go on to nipple stuff, should we talk about small boobs?
Yeah.
Because I'll also, again with the large boobs, before we move on, like the C hold and sandwiching your breast a little bit, if that's going to help you get like the nipple into your baby's mouth, if it's really big, you can use the C hold, which is just kind of, you taking your hand and making the shape of a C around it, compressing a little where it turns into kind of how you would push down on a sandwich before you take a bite out of it.
Yeah, just a little bit further back, like not right at the nipple, but further back, like in the breast tissue. And don't hold it too hard, because I've had some mothers that actually like cause bruising on their breast tissue because they're holding so tightly.
Yeah, you don't need to do that. You need to just compress for a second and let your baby get their mouth around it, and then you can just let go.
Yeah, just support.
Or,
just
you know, yeah. You
like...
can also massage your breasts. I mean, like large breasts with like a lot of tissue, massaging can help. And then small boobs. So for small boobs, I don't know. Do you see a lot of issues with this?
Not really.
Yeah.
No. And small boobs really, like, people really are worried that they're not going to make enough milk when they have small breasts. And you will. Like, some of the people that I've seen that have crazy oversupply come with small breasts.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with the size of your breast at all.
But the same thing applies. Like if you want to kind of help your baby, if you need to, you know, depending on how small they are, you know, if you need to kind of protrude your nipple out a little bit to help the baby get a latch, you can do the C hold again, or the V hold.
I like the C a little bit better. Well, yeah, I think it's less awkward.
It all accomplishes the same thing.
It does.
So you're just trying to push out a little bit to give your baby a little bit of assistance, which, you know, they can all use in the beginning, despite whatever breast size you have.
Yeah,
sometimes they just need help. Like they just need help getting latched on, and that these are all things that you can do to help them latch. So nipples. The nipple. So there's all kinds of things that go on with this, right? There's like partially protruding nipples, unilateral, flat nipples, and inverted nipples, and dimples, and
it's crazy.
It's amazing how many different things go on with nipples. I didn't know.
I know. I didn't know either. And people think that if their nipples aren't perfectly perfect, like, I don't even know. Like, where do we see nipples other than porn? I don't know. But
well, I mean, I guess those are always like kind of your typical what you think a nipple would look like.
Right. But sometimes, like, if you see those ads for like the swimsuit issues and stuff like that, you can like see the nipples protruding, you know, like through the swimsuit.
Yeah. Like in like Showgirls where they were putting ice on their nipples and like making them stick out through their tops.
Yeah. Like, give me a break. That's not the real world, you know? Like, it's just not. You're good with the movie references today.
I know.
Abby just sits around and watches movies from the 90s.
Right.
Like,
I do, yes. Just pop culture reference. That's my thing.
But nipples, I think, are more of a stressor for breastfeeders than breast size, even.
Yeah.
Because everybody worries about, like, what if my nipple's too big? What if my nipple is too small? What if my nipple's flat? And one of the things that happens, that I see happening, is that sometimes the breastfeeding mother doesn't even consider it until somebody says to them, usually in the hospital, oh, you have big nipples. Oh, you have flat nipples. Oh, your nipples are really small. Oh, and then the mother calls me and they're like, well, they said I had small nipples. Is that why the baby's not breastfeeding well? They said I had flat nipples. They said I had this. No, they just don't know how to help you. So they're going to blame your breast nipple size. Like, that's what they're doing.
Right.
I have not. I mean, first of all, the flat nipple thing, I don't meet too many mothers that truly have and have had flat nipples their entire life. A lot of nipples flatten out when your milk starts to come in because your body is filled with fluid from labor and delivery. So that breast tissue does get very swollen, which will flatten out the nipple. That is not forever. It goes away. But the rest of it, like the small nipples, inverted nipples, all that stuff, like babies can still latch. I remember a lactation consultant I used to work with. She was amazing. And she was like, we don't call it it's not called nipple feeding. It's called breastfeeding. They can still latch regardless of what the nipple looks like. And they can.
Yeah, I mean, they're not latching to the tip of it anyway.
Right.
You know, they're latching kind of around it. They're latching to the, you know, the areola area.
Right.
So it really doesn't matter.
I mean, the only time I ever see it really cause a problem And again, if it ever causes a problem with latch, it's usually just in the beginning because of the swollen breast tissue. That's really the bigger issue, not the nipple. It's the swollen breast tissue because of all the fluid that they pump into when you're in labor. So that is usually the bigger issue. Or if you have a situation where you have a super little like preemie baby and your nipple is a lot bigger, like in those kind of situations, yeah, you might have a little bit of a harder time kind of getting things going, but it doesn't mean that your baby is not going to breastfeed. And those are very specific situations. That is not everybody. That is not every baby and every parent. That is just a very specific, like, okay, my baby was born several weeks early, is very, very small, and I happen to have overly big nipples. I mean, you don't see that every day. Now, the inverted nipple thing, I just had this happen very recently with somebody, and she contacted me prior to having the baby when she was pregnant still, because she was concerned that she had an inverted nipple and wasn't going to be able to breastfeed. If you have an inverted nipple or two inverted nipples, that does not mean you can't breastfeed. That is not a game changer. Babies can still latch and breastfeed. And I did see this baby and mother after they had their baby, and the baby breastfed great on an inverted nipple. It can happen. Don't let anybody tell you it can't.
Yeah. Are there times that it can't? Do you see babies struggling with this?
I mean, sometimes, but again, it comes down to a lot of that swelling, the milk coming in and the fluid, because then it just stretches that out a lot more. Sometimes what I will see, or what I have seen, I won't say it happens every time, but what I have seen. So nipples sometimes when they're inverted will come out when you breastfeed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I have seen happen in the past is like the nipple will come out, mom will breastfeed, the nipple will come out, and then it'll fold back in after she's done breastfeeding, and it will feel very raw because it's still like, wet from breastfeeding.
Oh, yeah.
And it just goes in, it reverts back in, and it kind of can feel raw and it's not healing well. So sometimes that can cause a problem, but we just have to be more cautious with healing. But I don't ever really see it be a huge issue. You can use a nipple shield. I see a lot of families do that just to kind of get things started. I was going to ask about
that. So getting started. And then if you're going to do that, though, then we need some help getting off of it too, right? Which I feel like that's what happens.
You should always be working with a lactation consultant just to be sure that, because sometimes,
especially if you start like an intervention like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And what can happen too is, like, say, for example, maybe you're in the hospital and you have an inverted nipple and they say, okay, let's give you a nipple shield because you have an inverted nipple. But maybe that's not the reason why the baby wasn't breastfeeding well. You know what I mean? Maybe it was a different reason. Maybe they're not sucking well or something, like I've seen that happen too, where everybody thought it was this, this nipple issue, but it really wasn't. It was something completely different. So if you do start with a nipple shield, that's not the end of the world. And sometimes it will help, pull the nipple out as well as a baby's nursing. But we can totally get off of that too. But definitely work with somebody. You want to be working with a lactation consultant to make sure you're on the right path.
What do you think about there's these like things like you can pump for a couple minutes beforehand to get your nipple to pop out?
You can.
Or rolling, kind of rolling the nipple in between your thumb and your index finger a little to pop it out.
Yep, you can do that. I would recommend that before the pumping, only because
it just seems easier.
Right, exactly. I mean, not that the pumping doesn't, like, you can, but who is that ahead of their baby that they're like, okay, I know the baby's going to want to eat in 5 minutes, so let me just, it's really hard to feed on demand and be a few minutes ahead of your baby so that you can pump first.
No, especially if you could just roll it a little in between your fingers. If that, and if that works for you, then just do that.
Absolutely.
What do you think about breast shells? These things. So a breast shell, if you don't know, it's like a little thing that you can put on your nipple, like in between feedings, that creates like a little suction that pops the nipple out. Is that right? Am I explaining that right?
Yeah, you're explaining it right. There's no evidence to really show that they help, because sometimes they'll say wear them during pregnancy and it'll help the nipple to pop out. Yeah, that's what we hear sometimes too.
I just assumed that it would just pop it out like in that moment, not like long term.
Yeah.
Like if you just wear them, like it'll, like next time your baby wants to nurse, you're like, oh yeah, we're all prepped over here. You know?
Yeah. But I mean, there's not a lot of research behind it. Sometimes it can kind of like press on that breast tissue. Reverse pressure softening. I don't know if we've ever talked about that on the show, but reverse pressure, I'll put a link to it because there's a really good informational piece about it. I'll link that in the show notes. But reverse pressure softening, all that is like kind of methodically going around the areola and pushing that fluid back so that the nipple pops out.
Yeah.
Because honestly, a lot of this is just fluid retention when you're talking flat nipples.
Cool.
Yeah, so that can work really well.
So yeah, I mean, I think a lot of things, what happens with this, like you were saying, is like a large areola or like a really small nipple or a flat nipple, inverted nipple. A lot of times you hear, maybe you don't even know that this is a thing. For you, your breasts are just your breasts, right? You're just like, okay, these are just the girls I've always hung out with, whatever.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're not girls. I don't, whatever. They don't have to. Your breasts don't have to have a gender. You're just whatever. There's just a body part that you're used to, and then you're in the hospital, like you said, and somebody's like, "Oh my God, you have really big nipples, or you have flat nipples, or whatever. Like, we better get a nipple shield over here. I don't know if you're going to be able to breastfeed." And then like all this stuff starts happening that causes panic. When it's kind of similar to the whole lip tie, tongue tie thing that we were talking about, how like, we get really panicked about it, but sometimes it doesn't affect anything at all.
Right.
It doesn't affect anything, or like the interventions are kind of premature or unnecessary, or some other things could have been tried or whatever. And we're just kind of jumping to, because we're very like intervention focused, so it's just like, oh, well, we need to intervene here. We need to do something, when it could be that it's just not necessary at all. And, give it a try, give it some time like anybody else with nursing.
I've had, and this has happened more than once to me, where somebody has said, I was told my nipples were really big and I had no idea that that was like an issue, or I had no idea that they were big. Or I even had a partner say to me once, they said my wife's nipples were really big. I didn't think anything. I don't think they're strange. Like these poor families, like she's walking around thinking she's like a circus freak now, because people are like, your nipples are really, I think one of them even said they asked to take a picture, like for like research or whatever.
Oh, come on.
Because the nipples were so big. And I'm like,
okay, well, some nipples are big, some butts are big. I mean, like, I have a big butt. You want to take a picture for research?
Like,
you want a picture of my ass? Here, go ahead. I mean, like, based on what? Based on, like, again, like these ideal pictures of whatever, of this ideal image we have of bodies. And then it's like, well, it strays from that, so it's strange. When actually bodies just look all different.
Right.
And they're all made to birth and nurse babies. Like, that's just how it is.
And that's kind of how I always think of it. And maybe it's raw. Like, maybe I am just like living in this alternate universe where I am like, we have these bodies that are meant to birth and breastfeed these babies. Why is it that our environment is trying to find a way for this not to happen naturally?
Yeah.
We managed to come this far as a species, right?
Yeah.
We managed to get to the year 2021 as a species.
Barely. I mean, now we're screwing it up. We weren't screwing it up before. Now it's like,
now we're screwing
it
up. Yeah. But, like what happened if somebody had a big nipple back in, whatever year when babies were being born, and did people say, oh, well, your nipple's too big, that your baby's just going to have to
can you imagine?
Drink tree sap?
And just like hunter-gatherer societies, like, oh my God, large nipple, too large.
Too large.
You're like, on. You're ousted.
Yeah. You're ousted. It's insanity. It's insanity.
Yeah. I know. We've been so fooled and tricked into thinking that our bodies are not, they don't work and they don't function the way that they're supposed to when they look different from, the magazine. It's just so sad.
Who looks like that? And, because of Photoshop,
they don't even look like that. This is what I always want to tell people. That person in that picture doesn't even look like that.
Exactly. That's just what I was going to say. They don't look like that either. Yeah. It's a farce.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Dianne. That was very informative.
I aim to please. But don't worry about your nipples or your breasts. Your baby's going to breastfeed beautifully.
Yeah. And if you need a little help, we'll join the club, you know,
Yep,
and
absolutely.
contact a lactation consultant or let us know and we'll, walk you through it.
Yeah. Good luck.
Bye.
Bye.